Hello everyone, welcome to Self-Knowledge. Today, as every Sunday, we are having another interesting lecture of this self-knowledge course. Today, we'll be talking about the law of the pendulum. And in today's lecture, we will see one of the 48 laws that governs this physical world, and which is the law of the pendulum. And for us who are on this path of self-knowledge, knowing this particular law is of vital importance because it will allow us to understand how we can really reach the truth about anything and how we can reach the truth that is within ourselves, which is the most important. You will see that by understanding this law and how this law is handled both in the external world and in our internal world, we will be able to find the truth. So today's lecture's objective, I'll grab a second, is to know how this law works, how to transcend it, and how to get to the truth. Let me check if everything is okay with the broadcast, and we will start with the explanation of this lecture. Yeah, I think everything is okay. So let's start talking about the pendulum. Pendulum is a weight hung from a fixed point so that it can swing freely, especially a rod with a weight at the end that used to regulate the mechanism of all clocks. When clocks that work with batteries did not yet exist, clocks work thanks to the swinging movement of a pendulum. And this movement is actually profoundly significant since it makes us reflect on how absolutely everything in this life moves according to this movement, moves according to this law. In this life, you see that everything flows, everything ebbs, everything rises, and everything then falls, everything waxes and wanes, comes and goes according to this marvelous law. This law teaches us how everything in life, as I was saying, is moved by this. And it is not strange that everything oscillates. Actually, everything you see that comes from one stream to another. And the importance of this law is that it teaches us that the truth is not in either of these streams. For example, in lecture number 8 of this self-knowledge course, we was studying about the law of evolution and also about the law of involution. So, what the law of the pendulum comes to teach us is that this process of evolution and involution, this process of rising and falling, of growth and decrease, is permanent in everything, that it doesn't stop. In ancient times, there were still no such dogma of evolution that has led many people to think that the human being has been developing through an evolutionary process, and that this evolutionary process will lead the human being to become, by mere action of time, to become a superman. But the ancient sages perfectly understood how the law of the pendulum works, as everything that evolves and reaches its peak inevitably begins its process of involution. And this is possible for us to observe this process in the same civilization that have existed on Earth. We can observe how, for example, Egypt emerged with all its power and became a civilization that reached great levels of development. However, when they reached their highest point of development, a continuous and progressive process of decline began. undoubtedly going to the other side of the pendulum. Nothing remained actually of this majestic civilization but ruins. More, when Egypt fell, Jerusalem rose on the other side, the beloved city of the prophets. But when Israel fell as a great power, when the pendulum changed position, the Roman Empire emerged at the other end. So the law of the pendulum actually has governed all the great powers that have risen and really, if we observe carefully, we can see that absolutely everything is subjected to this law. We can observe how this law apply the same for trees, for animals, for us human beings, because you see how a human being grows, develops, reaches that stage in his life in which he enjoys strength, youth, beauty, and power, and feels as if he were going to be like eternal. But we see how inevitably at one point begins its process of decline, and the years of old age arrive, and with them, disease and decrepitude, and with them death. But we can also observe this law in the formation of a company or in the formation of a business. We see that when it reaches that limit where it's like living its best times, where it is given the best profitability, the pendulum begins to move in the opposite direction, and the company, with the pass of the time, false. The movement of this law is realness. However, if we begin to understand what the real purpose of this law is and how this law moves also in our inner world, then we can use it to reach wisdom. So, studying how the law of the pendulum works in our inner world, if we study our own psychology, we'll see that we also find this law moving inside there. Since all our emotions, thoughts, and our desires oscillate according to the law of the pendulum. Actually, all humanity is bipolar. We go from liking to disliking, from pleasure to pain, from being happy to being sad, and we don't maintain a balance. And this happens because all our psychological defects are bipolar. Each of them has two poles, the active pole and the passive pole. On one side of our own psychology, we can find, for example, laziness. But on one pole, we find laziness as that lack of encouragement to do, that need to be sleeping or laying down without doing anything. And on the other pole, on the other side, we find laziness as that encouragement to do many things that are not really important or productive, like the encouragement to do thousands of things, and then not having time or don't having encouragement, for example, for things that can lead us to awaken our consciousness, like meditation, for example. And on one side of our inner pendulum, we can find greed as our hoarding and our stingy defect. And at the other pole, we find it as our spendthrift defect. That defect in our psychology that wastes all our resources. And at one pole, we can find sadness, and at the other pole of our own psychology, we find joy. At one pole, we find hatred. At the other pole, we find infatuations. And however, we tend to confuse the passive pole of a psychological defect with a virtue. But what we must understand is that virtue is not found in any of the extremes. The virtue, actually, the consciousness, is what is real and will only be found in the center of the pendulum. However, we often make the mistake of clinging to one pole of the pendulum and believing that by holding on that side very tight, we can make it permanent. Actually, we cling to pleasure, for example, and what we don't see is that with the same strength that we cling to seeking and experiencing pleasure, with that same strength, the pendulum will swing to the other side and we will have to experience pain. The more attachment that we generate towards a person or towards a thing, the more we suffer when we lose it. The pendulum will always move, and the more we go to one extreme, with more force to that pendulum, and then when the pendulum moves to the other extreme, we'll do it with that same strength, with that same force. So the more someone gets, let's say, excited about the expectation of something, the more they suffer when they can get it. Or the more you enjoy getting something, the more frustrated you get when you lose it. And this is actually interesting to reflect, because we can also find or make a relationship with this law of the pendulum with a relationship. You see that when the relationship begins, both desire, mind, and emotion go through a process of ascent, of falling in love, of idealization, of romance, of passion. However, we see that the more intense that process is, when conflicts arrives, when misunderstandings arrives in that relationship, with that same intensity, the arguments take place. And with that same intensity comes the lack of love and even the hatred. And the common thing is that couples, if they stay together, they stay in that constant pendulum movement, moving from stages of romance to stages of fight and arguments, until a conflict occurs, and or boredom or betrayal arrives, and then they change partners, but just to continue in the same pendulum swing, but in another relationship, without ever finding permanent happiness, without ever finding a stable peace. And the interesting thing is that this happens to us with everything. We spend our lives trying to achieve stability, trying to achieve happiness, trying to find a state of permanent peace. However, since we mistakenly search for this peace, for this happiness, for this stability, but clinging to the end of one side of a pendulum, to one extreme, we never reach the truth. Now, how could this be avoided? Well, by observing and reflecting, by looking at both ends. For example, if in a couple relationship we observe, or we must be all the time observing everything that lead us to like and everything that lead us to dislike the couple. And we must work those aspects with the psychological depth. When we are being moved towards infatuation, we must eliminate from us all the psychological defects, or the psychological aspects that want to take us to emotional, mental, and sexual like overflow. And likewise, when we see ourselves being moved by lack of love, by displeasure, or by rejection about the couple, we must also work on that with the psychological depth, eliminating all these aspects by practicing this that we teach in this self-knowledge course, which is a psychological death, by asking to our own inner divine mother to eliminate everything that we find that is moving inside our mind and inside our emotion, and all the desires that arises inside of us. Then, if we do this way, the pendulum begins to lose strength. We no longer pass, through the center so quickly. The swing of the pendulum loses weight, and it will be like slowing down, and we will be able to see that middle point, that balance more clearly. We could even, through the technique of reflective meditation, which we learned in lecture number 2022, that you can find in the video section of this page if you haven't seen that lecture. We can, in that reflective meditation, bring all the scenes of our life in which we experience in relation to any psychological death that you want to work with. You must bring all the scenes where both poles, the scenes of your life where you experience the two sides of the pendulum. And we can, in the reflective meditation, work to find within us what is the conscious, what is the center of the pendulum. For example, if we are working on the defect of the jealous, or lost, or I don't know, hatred, whatever, you must remember in that reflective meditation when you were moved, when all your mind, emotion, desire take you to be on one pole, eliminate all that, for example, in your relationship, if that is what you are working on, and look of everything that moved within yourself, and that take you to fall in love, to feel joy, to feel all that hope in that relationship, etc. If you work on both sides, then you will be able to find what is the center of the pendulum. You are going to be able to find the consciousness, since the truth is in the center, in the balance, in observing both streams, reflecting, eliminating both pleasure and pain, joy and suffering, to keep yourself in the present moment, in balance, in what is actually permanent. It is in the absence of pain and in the absence of pleasure where we will find true happiness. It is in the absence of hate and in the absence of infatuation where we will find true love. True love is actually something eternal, something permanent, and we will only know peace and true happiness if we eliminate the psychological eyes that keep us going all the time from one stream to the other. But happens that our egoic mind actually resists to balance. The ego finds balance like boring. It prefers to let off steam mentally, emotionally, or sexually, because that makes the ego feel alive. But then we will not be able to avoid, as it is a law, to impact ourselves with the other pole, with the emptiness, with the pain, with the sadness, and feel it in the same magnitude in which we feel that pleasure. And this is actually the purpose of this law, to make us experience both sides of the coin, so that when we reflect on them, we see that neither at one extreme nor at the other will be able to find the truth. But also, we can see this law of the pendulum in relation to our beliefs. When we believe in something, or when we don't believe in something, we are simply at one end of the pendulum. We are simply holding to onto a concept. We can place at the right extreme of a pendulum the various pseudo-esoteric and pseudo-occult schools, all the religions, all the sects. We can put it on one side. And we can place all the materialist or atheist or skeptical schools at the other extreme of the pendulum. However, we see that the religious fanatic, due to some unusual event or due to some disappointment, such as, I don't know, praying to God for the life of his sick son and hoping to be assisted for God after a life of religious devotion, but it turns out that the son dies. That could be an example, or by being defeated in a controversy by an esotericist, he can go to the other end of the pendulum and become an atheist, become an skeptic. And on the other hand, that atheist, that materialistic fanatic also, due to any unusual event, perhaps a transcendental metaphysical event, or even in a moment of unspeakable terror, can take him to the opposite extreme of the pendulum and turn him into, a terrible religious reaction. Then we see that the truth is not found in any concept, on neither side, in any party, neither on the extreme right nor on the extreme left. But it happens that because we believe ourselves to be wise, we tend to fanatically defend any position or any theory without having any personal verification. And it is only to find ourselves before the swing of the pendulum to change our position or to change our way of thinking. So, neither the spiritualist currents nor their materialist opponents will ever be able to lead us to the truth, since they are all based on beliefs, on concepts, not on real experimentation or verification. And spirit and matter are two concepts very debatable, very thorny, that no one really understands. If we are asked what is matter, for example, we could give a concept. We could say, well, matter is everything that occupies a space. Or if we are asked what is spirit, we can give one or many concepts. We can say, well, spirit is consciousness, or it is the universal energy, or it is God, however you understand God. But these are just concepts, because the mind knows nothing about the spirit. The mind knows nothing about the matter. Only when we get rid of all the concepts, those that we have in relation to one stream and that we have in relation to the other, the ones that we have in relation to spiritualism and the ones that we have in relation to atheism or materialism, and those that we have in relation to anything, to make way for verification, then we will come to know the truth. For example, someone could tell us about, let's say, astral projection. Or we could, for example, look here in the video section for lecture number 3, where we saw the practice for the astral projection. But that theory is going to be just a concept in which we can believe or not believe, and we can start to fill ourselves with thousands of other concepts that support our point that the astral projection is true, or that support our point that the astral projection is false. But as long as we don't go and do the practice as many times as necessary until we get to verify for ourselves, the reality of astral projection and thus become a truth in us, we will only be dancing between concepts because of what we usually do. Let me see something. Allow me just a moment. Okay, sorry. And happens that a concept is nothing more than that, a concept. And reality is not a concept. Although many concepts can be forged about reality, but we tend to label all things. And we form thousands of concepts about things, and therefore we stop like experiencing reality. And we just see everything through the concepts that we have about reality. And we believe that the more concepts that we have, the wiser we will be. But by never checking directly, we don't realize how all these concepts are what keep us from the possibility of really getting to know. Because the more concepts that we have, the more we have learned without actually checking, more we will have to unlearn to really get to know. We must understand that the truth is not in beliefs. What I think or believe about something is not the truth. The truth is what I verify. And as long as we continue clinging to concepts and beliefs, we will never reach the truth. Neither in the extreme right nor in the extreme left is the truth. Neither supporting this concept or the other. I will have the truth. When I defend something according to my mind, I become a slave to that concept. And fanatically, I can attack those who don't think or believe what I do. That I believe that God is in such a place, or that the truth is in such a theory, or that I believe that this knowledge is the truth without having experienced it, without having verified it. On the other hand, I believe, or let's say that what you think is false, but without also verifying it. And so we defend or we reject lots of concepts and underestimate those who think differently, because we think we are more intelligent, we think we are wiser, and we don't realize that we are only being slaves to a concept. That is not the truth, since the truth is out of all concepts. That is actually why Master Jesus used to say, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. The one at one pole, criticizes the one at the other. And whoever is at one pole or the other believes that he has the truth. But actually, the one who finds the center, you see that doesn't criticize because he understands. The one in the center doesn't believe that he has the truth because he is the truth. Therefore, when we find ourselves arguing with another, judging and criticizing another, we actually don't have the truth. We are just polarized. We are just on one stream of the pendulum. Because what is the truth? When Jesus was asked, what is the truth? He kept a profound silence. And when the Buddha was asked the same, he turned his back and withdrew. And with this action, both masters gave us a profound teaching. And that is that the truth cannot be conceptualized. That whatever I can say is the truth is not the truth, since the truth is only found in inner silence, in the absence of the psychological eye. The truth is actually the unknown from instant to instant, from moment to moment. It is not among the swaying of theories and beliefs. The concept, as you can see here, that the mind can forge about the truth is never the truth. We must remove from us this false idea that we are right. We must empty ourselves of all our unverified concepts and seek the truth in the direct verification through our own experimentation, given that truth must be experienced, not not believed or assumed. Truth is something that must be directly experienced, like when you put your finger in the fire and you get burnt, or like when you swallow water and you drown. There you are experiencing the reality. Now, where is the truth? The truth, you need to know that, is in the center of the pendulum, not in the extreme right and not in the extreme left. Therefore, we must begin by observing and recognizing when and in relation to what we are polarized, in relation to our concepts or our beliefs, or in relation to any of our psychological defects. Only when we are able to observe our own inner pendulum, then we will be able to observe and eliminate through psychological death those aspects that are keeping us in one extreme or in another. The center of the pendulum is within ourselves, is found in the inner silence, when we are fully living the present moment, when the consciousness is actually activated, when we are in that state of self-observation, and we can achieve that state by constantly practicing the psychological death. And it is there where we must discover and we must directly experience the real, the truth. We will only find the truth in the inner silence, when we eliminate the psychological I, when we eliminate the different ways of being that manifest in desire, that manifest in mind, that manifest in our emotions, and we can know the truth in that point, because only a consciousness can experience itself, and only through psychological death is that we can release the essence, release the consciousness that is actually trapped, that is actually conditioned within our all the egoic manifestations of our psychology. The truth has nothing to do with what has been said or left unsaid. Sorry, with what has been written or left unwritten. It only comes to us when the ego has died. That is why it is so important to practice the psychological death at any time. We must understand that the mind cannot seek the truth because it doesn't know it. The truth is something that comes to us like spontaneously when we have eliminated all our psychological defects, all the ego. And as long as our consciousness continues bottled up within the myself, within that ego within us, it will not be able, it will not be able to experience that which is real, that which is beyond the body, beyond the affections, beyond the mind, that which is the truth. And just to end this explanation, let's make clear this point, which is the critical point. We must learn to find that critical point where the truth is, where the consciousness is. The top of each oscillation of our inner pendulum, of course, when we believe that we have the truth. Then it returns, and at the other stream, when we believe that we have the truth at that side, well, it returns again and shows us that we don't have the truth, that is not found at any of the extremes. This is the profound teaching that is contained in this law. And we need to know that to come to consciousness, to come to understanding in any situation, we must avoid polarizing ourselves in any extremes. Within ourselves, we can find these extremes in our mind and in our sex. So we will find them in our thoughts, in our justifications, that's on our minds, sorry, and we will find them in our desires. We can find that in our sex, where is the motor instinctive sexual brain. So we must keep the inner pendulum balanced, keeping ourselves, living in the here and now, living in the present moment, focused on the heart, because inside of us that is like our center. And there in our hearts is where we are going to find the inner silence. So, if any situation arises, we eliminate the desire that is in the sex and we return to the heart, living the present moment in concentration. Then we eliminate the thoughts, what is moving on the mind, and we return to the heart. And thus we keep our inner pendulum balanced. And that way we will reach understanding in any situation, because understanding is actually a faculty of the heart that allow us to reconcile the opposites, that allows that within ourselves we can be reaching the truth about everything at every moment. If we manage to keep ourselves in the present moment, concentrated in our heart, which is the center of our inner pendulum, there we are going to always find the truth. Because of what use is to man to know thousands of theories if he has never experienced the truth. And I will leave you with this phrase to ponder. And actually, this has been today's topic. I hope it will be useful for your inner work. And I want to invite you to the next topic that we will be touching next Sunday. At the same time, we are going to be talking about the method to awaken consciousness, the two consciousness, the subjective and the objective one. So don't miss that interesting lecture. And thank you for watching the video. If you have any question, you can leave it there in the comments of the video, and I will be gladly solving any question you have. Thank you for watching this video. See you next Sunday, and bye-bye.